Hey there guys, Kevin with JcrOffroad. Today I'm going to be walking you through how to install a set of our aluminum front fenders on your Jeep JK. Let's get started. Alright, so to begin removing this fender, we're going to start by unplugging the marker light here. That's just going to be a clip up behind here that you're going to have to pinch a little tab down and pull out. And then once you have that connector undone, there is a clip up top here where it fastens to the fender. That's just like a Christmas tree style clip, and you just need to pull down and that'll come out of there. Just let that hang in the back for now. Next, what you need to do is you need to remove all these plastic rivets that connect the outer and inner fender portions. Now you can see most of mine are missing because this has already been off once before. But if you come right here, you can see I've got one. You can either drill that out with like a 1/4 inch drill bit, or like I'm going to do here is take a pick and just pushing right in the center. I'm going to push the center of that out, and then the rest of that rivet should pull right out of the hole. Now with all those plastic rivets removed, using a 10mm socket, we can come up in here inside the wheel well and remove the 6 fasteners holding the rest of that fender on. Now most of these are pretty visible and obvious, but there is one kind of recessed hidden up here in a hole, so just be aware of that. Now at this point, the only thing holding this fender on is going to be all the plastic factory clips that go from the back side of here into the sheet metal. So just starting at the front of the rear, get a good grip on it, and just start applying some outward pressure. And you should be able to pull those clips loose. Just like so, and get that out of your way. All right, now just double check here, just in case all your clips didn't come out with the fender. You'll just need to get behind these with your panel tool and pry those out. So that you have a nice clean mounting surface there to work with. Now it's also a good idea to go ahead and clean up any debris that might be on there that just got, stuck down in there over time. Now we can get started installing the new fender. All right, so taking our rear fender support bracket here, we can get started. We're going to take the side that has 2 holes and face that in, and this side with 1 hole facing out. And we'll insert it right here between the fender and this inner brace portion, and then using this small hole, insert a button head bolt and then one of the supplied flange nuts on the back side. And then you just want to snug that down in place for now, because we're going to use this bracket as a guide to drill some holes in a moment. Now as you can see here, we've got 2 holes that need to be drilled. We're going to need to drill these out to 5/16, but I'm going to start those with a smaller drill bit. And it is worth noting here that if you have a longer drill bit, it does make this a bit easier, but you can still get it done just like this. Now, with your pilot holes drilled, take your 5/16 drill bit and you can finish off these holes. So now with both of those holes drilled, you can actually remove this outer bolt and then pull your bracket back out. So now you can touch up any exposed metal that you might have here where you drilled those holes, as well as any exposed metal that you might have on your bracket since you used that as a guide. Now using the shorter of your 2 button head bolts, you can insert those in the back 2 holes and then back that up with a flange head nut, and then just leave those a little bit loose for now. Now take your upper support bracket, and in these 3 holes you can install the 3 supplied nut clips just pushing those down over the top and lining them up with the hole, or dropping them on the ground. Now what you can do is slide this up behind this outer fender and in front of this inner core support, and then use a couple of the bolts that you took out of your inner fender to loosely hold that up in place for now. And you can just leave these finger tight at that point. Now at this point, your Jeep's ready for the fender to go on, but in preparation for that, we want to get these lights installed. So you're going to want to take your amber marker light and just insert it into this slot that we have down here. Now pay attention, there is a top to this. It's written right here on the lens. And then just kind of pinching that and working it up in, you should be able to push that right into place. Back here behind, just behind the outer face of the fender, like so. Next we'll insert the clear running light. That's going to go just ahead of this amber. Pay attention to the letters on this as well. And you'll just insert that here behind this outside flange, and then using your 832 button heads, drop that down through the hole. Now we're using stainless here, but the ones you're going to receive will be black. And then you can just back this bolt up with the small nylock nut. Go ahead and get both of these started before tightening anything down. And then with an Allen driver and a wrench, you can snug this up. Now pay attention here as you're tightening these down. You just want to go until the light doesn't move anymore. You don't want to go crazy here and crack the lens. And then also as you tighten these down, just make sure you're lined up with your hole here so it looks good. Now take your new fender and just slide it right in place. You can kind of use this factory bracket that hangs out here to support the front of it a little bit for now. And then I'm just going to use one of my shorter button head bolts right here to get started and back that up with a flange lock nut. And then one thing to note here is we do have two different lengths of bolts that you're working with. So these longer bolts are going to go in anywhere that you're going into one of those support brackets, or like back here going through. Now these top three are going to thread into those nut clips you installed earlier. All of the others are going to get backed up with a flange nut. All right, so with everything started loosely by hand, you can come in here with your 10mm socket, tighten these two bottom bolts up going into this upper brace. And then tighten up the rest of these button heads using your 3/16 Allen. All right, so now with your fender installed, we need to get these lights working. So what we're shooting for here is we want both of these to be on with your daytime running lights so that they're on when your lights are on. But this amber one here has a high and a low light function, so that's also going to work with your turn signal. So we're going to show you how to get that done. All right, so right here, we're going to be using spade terminals because that's going to make this easy for us to disconnect and reconnect in the future. But you can really use any electrical connector you're familiar with. First step I'm going to do here is taking the white wire, which is our ground on this amber light, and the black wire, which is our ground on this clear light. And I'm going to tie those two together in the same terminal. And then next, we're going to take the black wire from your amber light and tie it in with the red wire from your clear light. And then lastly up here, taking the red wire from your amber light, just put a single spade terminal on that one all by itself. And now we're using heat shrink connectors here. So with a lighter, heat gun, whatever you have, you can shrink those down. And now, taking the harness that runs to your factory marker light, you can go ahead and figure out kind of how you're going to want to route these and how long this needs to be. And then you can cut that off. And then open this up so you can access the wires. Now with these two wires exposed, you're going to need to strip the casing back off of those so that you can install a terminal. Now in our case, I'm just going to be installing male spade terminals on each of these since I put the female ends up here on the lights. All right, and then next what you're going to need to do is using your turn signal harness here. We just went ahead and removed this from the bulb socket up here already. You got to use, for this one, the wire that's located the farthest away from your black ground wire here, and that's going to be your turn signal power. So on this side, it looks like it might be a white and a brown wire. On the other side, I believe it's white and pink. But again, just the one that's furthest away from the black ground wire in this harness. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull this harness out of a clip a little farther up. And then now with that clip removed, I can kind of fish this harness back through here and just get a little bit more room to work with it. So what I need to do next is open this harness up and find the wire that we wanted to tie into from down here. All right, so now with that harness opened up, I found the wire I'm looking for here. It looks like it's actually white and gray. I think I said it was white and brown down here. But again, farthest one away from your ground wire on the harness down there. And then once you're sure you have the white wire, you can go ahead and cut into that. And then strip both ends back so that it's ready to install into a connector. So on this one, we're just going to be using a butt connector. So on one end, the end that's coming from the light, I'm just going to insert that wire by itself and crimp it down in place. And then on the other end, I'm going to tie that wire in with my own little about 10-12 inch jumper wire. And then crimp those both together into this side of the connector. Okay, and then lastly here, to the other end of that jumper wire that you just installed, you need to insert a spade terminal on it. Again, on my end, this is going to be a male since it's a female on the other side. And now at this point, we can connect all this together and check our light functions. So what you want to do here is taking the black wire that came out of your factory harness here for the side marker. You can connect that to the spade that has your black and white wire here. And then taking my white and green power wire that comes out of that same harness, I'll connect it with the black wire and red wire here coming down from my lights. And then my single red wire coming down from the lights will get tied in with my single gray wire, which is what I chose to use here for my jumper, coming over from the factory turn signal harness. And now I'm just gonna fish this turn signal back through here and reinstall it into its socket. And now we're ready to check our light functions. All right, so as you can see here, ours is functioning properly. We've got our running light, we've got the amber running light as well as the turn signal. Now we just have our wiring kind of hanging down here. So this is the perfect time to go back in, use some electrical tape, some wire loom, tidy this all up, make it look pretty, and then tie it up here hidden out of the way. All right, so at this point, you got your fender on the Jeep. If you didn't go ahead and upgrade and get our inner fenders, you should. But if you're stuck with this stock one, don't worry, you can modify it and make it work for now in a pinch. For starters, what you're gonna need to do there is you're gonna need to separate these two halves, because there are two pieces here, this larger brace structure and then the thinner inner structure. And that's all just held together with several Christmas tree clips along with the edges where those two meet. So go ahead and just start by pulling all those out. And then just separate those two. So now that you have just the thinner inner structure, you need to trim this to make it fit. On the front edge here, it's really easy. You basically just need to follow this line where this bolt hole is, or clip hole, I'm sorry. So just follow this line where this clip hole is and just carry that straight forward and down right here. You can mark it with a marker if you need to. But basically, you're just going to need a straight line down there. Once you get that cut, you can kind of round this edge off so it looks a little cleaner. Now just take your knife and cut along that line you made. And then again, just kind of round off that corner. And that's pretty much all you need to do on the front edge. All right, now toward the back edge, what you need to do is you kind of gotta, you can get a straight edge here if you want and kind of join the two, but you're kind of trying to join this point here and this point here. But as you come up, you kind of need to follow the edge of this bend as well as the edge of this bend. So you're basically gonna have a transition right in here in the center. So your line is gonna look somewhat like this as you transition down to the outer edge here, and then just follow that all the way down. And then again, just take your razor knife, cut that. You can always leave a little bit of extra here too, because you can cut more off later after a little bit of test fitment. Now with it test fit up in here, you can kind of see if there's anywhere else you're going to need to trim for it to fit the way you want. You can also see where we went ahead and bolted our fender brace on before. We're going to now need to remove this fastener, and then we're also going to want to put a zip tie through this front hole. So we're going to need to take this factory nut clip out of the frame so we can get those out of the way and then get this installed. Now to take this bolt out, it's just going to be a 10mm like you used to put it in, but to get this nut clip out of the frame, I'm just going to take a flat blade screwdriver and get behind it in there, and you just kind of need to pry on it a little bit. There's a tab that locks it into this hole, and you can walk it off and get it out of the way. All right, now with those things out of the way, go ahead and get yourself a large like fender washer or something to put on that smaller bolt. And then you can put your inner fender up in place and loosely fasten it with that bolt hole. Now grab yourself another fender washer and another small factory bolt and thread it right up in to this factory nut clip in this core support structure. After you got those two started, you can take this longer standoff nut that you pulled out earlier and reinsert it back through this hole and onto the stud. All right, with those three fasteners in, you can come up here to the front, and using this factory hole in the inner fender, you can just insert a zip tie there and also run it through this factory hole that you pulled the nut clip out of earlier. And that'll just hold the front of this in place and keep it from flopping around in the wind. You can kind of tuck it up behind there if you think that looks a little cleaner. And then go ahead and just snip the end of that off. Now in the back here, you're gonna see that you don't really have much of anything to fasten to. Not a huge deal. Just go ahead and push this up where you want it, and then kind of straddling the bottom edge of our support bracket in here, you're gonna drill 2 holes, like 3/16 1/4 inch, just something to fit a zip tie. So one above and one below the bottom of that support bracket. Once you have those 2 holes drilled, just get yourself a long zip tie, insert it through there, over the support bracket, and then loop it back around underneath. And fish it right out of your bottom hole. And that'll allow you to tie the back of this fender back in there tight. Snip the end of that off. And now you can tighten up any fasteners that you loosened in here before. And that's going to do it for this install. So if you guys have any questions about these or any JCR product, feel free to give us a call, 269-353-1184, or shoot us an email, info@jcroffroad.com.